Gross domestic product, first quarter 2020, third estimate. Corporate profits, first quarter 2020, revised estimate. Embargoed until release at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time, Thursday, June 25, 2020. Real gross domestic product (GDP) decreased at an annual rate of 5.0% in the first quarter of 2020, Table 1, according to the third estimate released by the Bureau of Economic Analysis. In the fourth quarter, real GDP increased 2.1%. The GDP estimate released today is based on more complete source data than were available for the second estimate issued last month. In the second estimate, the decrease in real GDP was also 5.0%. With the third estimate, an upward revision to nonresidential fixed investment was offset by downward revisions to private inventory investment, personal consumption expenditures (PCE), and exports. See Updates to GDP on page 2. Coronavirus COVID-19 impact on the first quarter 2020 GDP estimate. The decline in first quarter GDP reflected the response to the spread of COVID-19, as governments issued stay-at-home orders in March. This led to rapid changes in demand, as businesses and schools switched to remote work or canceled operations, and consumers canceled, restricted, or redirected their spending. The full economic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic cannot be quantified in the GDP estimate for the first quarter of 2020 because the impacts are generally embedded in source data and cannot be separately identified. For more information, see the technical note. The decrease in real GDP in the first quarter reflected negative contributions from PCE, private inventory investment, exports, and non-residential fixed investment that were partly offset by positive contributions from residential fixed investment, federal government spending, and state and local government spending. Imports, which are a subtraction in the calculation of GDP, decreased. Table 2. The decrease in PCE reflected a decrease in services, led by healthcare as well as food services and accommodations. The decrease in private inventory investment was mainly in manufacturing, led by petroleum and coal products. The decrease in exports primarily reflected a decrease in services, led by travel. The decrease in non-residential fixed investment primarily reflected a decrease in equipment, led by transportation equipment. Real gross domestic income (GDI) decreased 4.4% in the first quarter, in contrast to an increase of 3.1% in the fourth quarter. The average of real GDP and real GDI, a supplemental measure of U.S. economic activity that equally weights GDP and GDI, decreased 4.7% in the first quarter, in contrast to an increase of 2.6% in the fourth quarter. Table 1. Current dollar GDP decreased 3.4%, or $189.4 billion, in the first quarter to a level of $21.54 trillion. In the fourth quarter, GDP increased 3.5%, or $186.6 billion. Tables 1 and 3. The price index for gross domestic purchases increased 1.7% in the first quarter, compared with an increase of 1.4% in the fourth quarter. Table 4. The PCE price index increased 1.3%, compared with an increase of 1.4%. Excluding food and energy prices, the PCE price index increased 1.7%, compared with an increase of 1.3%. More information on the source data that underlie the estimates is available in the Key Source Data and Assumptions file on BE's website. Updates to GDP. In the third estimate, first quarter real GDP decreased 5.0% from the fourth quarter, unrevised from the second estimate. An upward revision to non-residential fixed investment was offset by downward revisions to private inventory investment, PCE, and exports. For more information, see the technical note. For information on updates to GDP, see the Additional Information section below. Corporate profits. Profits from current production. Corporate profits with inventory valuation and capital consumption adjustments decreased $262.8 billion in the first quarter, in contrast to an increase of $53 billion in the fourth quarter. Table 10. Profits of domestic financial corporations decreased $37.5 billion in the first quarter, in contrast to an increase of $0.7 billion in the fourth quarter. profits of domestic nonfinancial corporations decreased $181.8 billion, in contrast to an increase of $53.7 billion. Rest of the world profits decreased $43.5 billion, compared with a decrease of $1.4 billion. Upcoming annual update of the National Income and Product Accounts. B will release results from the 2020 annual update of the National Income and Product Accounts on July 30, 2020, in conjunction with the advance estimate of GDP for the second quarter of 2020. For estimates of real GDP and its major components, the span of the update will cover the most recent 5 years, 2015 to 2019, and the first quarter of 2020. Estimates of income and saving will be subject to revision from 1999 through the first quarter of 2020. More information on the 2020 annual update is included in the May Survey of Current Business article, GDP and the Economy. Next release, July 30, 2020 at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Gross Domestic Product, second quarter 2020, advance estimate, and annual update. Additional information. Resources. Additional resources available at www.b.gov. Information on COVID-19 and recovery impacts is available on our website. Stay informed about B developments by reading the B blog, signing up for B's email subscription service, or following B on Twitter at BEA_news. Historical time series for these estimates can be accessed in B's interactive data application. Access B data by registering for B's Data Application Programming Interface (API). For more on B's statistics, see our monthly online journal, The Survey of Current Business, B's News Release Schedule, NEPA Handbook, Concepts and Methods of the U.S. National Income and Product Accounts. Definitions. Gross domestic product (GDP) is the value of the goods and services produced by the nation's economy less the value of the goods and services used up in production. GDP is also equal to the sum of personal consumption expenditures, gross private domestic investment, net exports of goods and services, and government consumption expenditures and gross investment. Gross domestic income (GDI) is the sum of incomes earned and costs incurred in the production of GDP. In national economic accounting, GDP and GDI are conceptually equal. In practice, GDP and GDI differ because they are constructed using largely independent source data. Current dollar estimates are valued in the prices of the period when the transactions occurred, that is, at market value. Also referred to as nominal estimates or as current price estimates. Real values are inflation-adjusted estimates, that is, estimates that exclude the effects of price changes. The Gross Domestic Purchases Price Index measures the prices of final goods and services purchased by U.S. residents. The Personal Consumption Expenditure Price Index measures the prices paid for the goods and services purchased by, or on the behalf of, persons. Personal income is the income received by, or on behalf of, all persons from all sources, from participation as laborers in production, from owning a home or business, from the ownership of financial assets, and from government and business in the form of transfers. It includes income from domestic sources as well as the rest of world. It does not include realized or unrealized capital gains or losses. Disposable personal income is the income available to persons for spending or saving. It is equal to personal income less personal current taxes. Personal outlays is the sum of personal consumption expenditures, personal interest payments, and personal current transfer payments. Personal saving is personal income less personal outlays and personal current taxes. The personal saving rate is personal saving as a percentage of disposable personal income. Profits from current production, referred to as corporate profits with inventory valuation adjustment (EVA) and capital consumption (CCADJ) adjustment in the National Income and Product Accounts (NIPAs), is a measure of the net income of corporations before deducting income taxes that is consistent with the value of goods and services measured in GDP. The EVA and CCADJ are adjustments that convert inventory withdrawals and depreciation of fixed assets reported on a tax return, historical cost basis to the current cost economic measures used in the National Income and Product Accounts. Profits for domestic industries reflect profits for all corporations located within the geographic borders of the United States. The rest of the world row component of profits is measured as the difference between profits received from row and profits paid to row. For more definitions, see the glossary, National Income and Product Accounts. Statistical conventions. Annual versus quarterly rates. Quarterly seasonally adjusted values are expressed at annual rates, unless otherwise specified. This convention is used for B's featured, seasonally adjusted measures to facilitate comparisons with related and historical data. For details, see the FAQ. Why does B publish estimates at annual rates? Quarterly not seasonally adjusted values are expressed only at quarterly rates. Percent changes. Percent changes in quarterly seasonally adjusted series are displayed at annual rates, unless otherwise specified. For details, see the FAQ. How is average annual growth calculated? Percent changes in quarterly not seasonally adjusted values are calculated from the same quarter 1 year ago. All published percent changes are calculated from unrounded data. Calendar years and quarters. Unless noted otherwise, annual and quarterly data are presented on a calendar basis. Quantities and prices. Quantities, or real volume measures, and prices are expressed as index numbers with a specified reference year equal to 100, currently 2012. Quantity and price indexes are calculated using a Fisher-chained weighted formula that incorporates weights from two adjacent periods, quarters for quarterly data and annuals for annual data. For details on the calculation of quantity and price indexes, see Chapter 4, Estimating Methods in the NEPA Handbook. Chained dollar values are calculated by multiplying the quantity index by the current dollar value in the reference year 2012 and then dividing by 100. Percent changes calculated from real quantity indexes and chained dollar levels are conceptually the same, any differences are due to rounding. Chained dollar values are not additive because the relative weights for a given period differ from those of the reference year. In tables that display chained dollar values, a residual line shows the difference between the sum of detailed chained dollar series and its corresponding aggregate. Updates to GDP. B releases 3 vintages of the current quarterly estimate for GDP. Advance estimates are released near the end of the first month following the end of the quarter and are based on source data that are incomplete or subject to further revision by the source agency. Second and third estimates are released near the end of the second and third months, respectively, and are based on more detailed and more comprehensive data as they become available. The table below shows the average revisions to the quarterly percent changes in real GDP between different estimate vintages, without regard to sign. Annual and comprehensive updates are typically released in late July. Annual updates generally cover at least the 5 most recent calendar years and their associated quarters and incorporate newly available major annual source data as well as some changes in methods and definitions to improve the accounts. Comprehensive or benchmark updates are carried out at about 5-year intervals and incorporate major periodic source data, as well as major conceptual improvements. Unlike GDP, an advanced current quarterly estimate of GDI is not released because data on domestic profits and on net interest of domestic industries are not available. For fourth quarter estimates, these data are not available until the third estimate. List of GDP news release tables. Table 1. Real gross domestic product and related measures, percent change from preceding period. Table 2. Contributions to percent change in real gross domestic product. Table 3. Gross domestic product, level and change from preceding period. Table 4. Price indexes for gross domestic product and related measures, percent change from preceding period. Table 5. Real gross domestic product, annual percent change. Table 6. Real gross domestic product, percent change from quarter 1 year ago. Table 7. Relation of gross domestic product, gross national product, and national income. Table 8. Personal income and its disposition. Table 9. Corporate profits, level and percent change. Table 10. Corporate profits by industry, level and change from preceding period. Table 11. Gross value added of nonfinancial domestic corporate business. Appendix Table A. Real gross domestic product and related aggregates, percent change from preceding period and contributions to percent change. Appendix Table B. Not seasonally adjusted real gross domestic product, level and percent change from quarter 1 year ago. Table 1. Real gross domestic product and related measures, percent change from preceding period, are, revised, 1. Gross domestic income deflated by the implicit price deflator for gross domestic product. Table 2. Contributions to percent change in real gross domestic product. Table 3. Gross domestic product, level and change from preceding period continues. Are, revised, 1. Real gross domestic income as gross domestic income deflated by the implicit price deflator for gross domestic product. Note: users are cautioned that particularly for components that exhibit rapid change in prices relative to other prices in the economy, the chained dollar estimates should not be used to measure the component's relative importance or its contribution to the growth rate of more aggregate series. For accurate estimates of the contributions to percent changes in real gross domestic product, use Table 2. Table 3. Gross domestic product, level and change from preceding period. Table ends, are, revised, 1. Real gross domestic income as gross domestic income deflated by the implicit price deflator for gross domestic product. Note: users are cautioned that particularly for components that exhibit rapid change in prices relative to other prices in the economy, the chained dollar estimates should not be used to measure the component's relative importance or its contribution to the growth rate of more aggregate series. For accurate estimates of the contributions to percent changes in real gross domestic product, use Table 2. Table 4. Price indexes for gross domestic product and related measures, percent change from preceding period, are, revised, 1. Food excludes personal consumption expenditures for purchased meals and beverages, which are classified in food services. 2. This index is a supplemental measure that is based on household expenditures for which there are observable price measures. It excludes most implicit prices, for example, financial services furnished without payment, and the final consumption expenditures of nonprofit institutions serving households. Table 5. Real gross domestic product, annual percent change, 1. Gross domestic income deflated by the implicit price deflator for gross domestic product. 2. Food excludes personal consumption expenditures for purchased meals and beverages, which are classified in food services. 3. This index is a supplemental measure that is based on household expenditures for which there are observable price measures. It excludes most implicit prices, for example, financial services furnished without payment, and the final consumption expenditures of nonprofit institutions serving households. Note: estimates under the percent change from the preceding year columns are calculated from annual data. Estimates under the percent change fourth quarter to fourth quarter columns are calculated from fourth quarter values relative to the same quarter 1 year prior. Table 6. Real gross domestic product, percent change from quarter 1 year ago, are, revised, 1. Gross domestic income deflated by the implicit price deflator for gross domestic product. 2. Food excludes personal consumption expenditures for purchased meals and beverages, which are classified in food services. 3. This index is a supplemental measure that is based on household expenditures for which there are observable price measures. It excludes most implicit prices, for example, financial services furnished without payment, and the final consumption expenditures of nonprofit institutions serving households. Table 7. Relation of gross domestic product, gross national product, and national income. Billions of dollars. Table 8. Personal income and its disposition. Billions of dollars. Are, revised, 1. Personal income is also equal to national income less corporate profits with inventory valuation and capital consumption adjustments, taxes on production and imports less subsidies, contributions for government social insurance, net interest and miscellaneous payments, business current transfer payments net, and current surplus of government enterprises, plus personal income receipts on assets, and personal current transfer receipts. 2. The current dollar measure is deflated by the implicit price deflator for personal consumption expenditures. Table 9. Corporate profits, level and percent change. Table 10. Corporate profits by industry, level and change from preceding period. Billions of dollars. Note: Estimates in this table are based on the 2012 North American Industry Classification System (NAICS). Table 11. Gross value added of nonfinancial domestic corporate business. 1. The current dollar gross value added is deflated using the gross value added chain type price index for nonfinancial industries from the GDP by industry accounts. For periods when this price index is not available, the chain type price index for GDP goods and structures is used. 2. Chain dollar consumption of fixed capital of nonfinancial corporate business is calculated as the product of the chain type quantity index and the 2012 current dollar value of the corresponding series, divided by 100. 3. Chain dollar net value added of nonfinancial corporate business is the difference between the gross value added and the consumption of fixed capital. 4. The deflator for gross value added of nonfinancial corporate business divided by 100. Note: estimates in this table are based on the 2012 North American Industry Classification System (NAICS). Appendix Table A: Real Gross Domestic Product and related aggregates, percent change from preceding period and contributions to percent change. 1. Consists of GDP less gross value added of farm, of households and institutions, and of general government. Appendix Table B: Not seasonally adjusted real gross domestic product, level and percent change from quarter 1 year ago.